So, we have been collecting information about them for several months. We have a plan. Before we begin, are you all with me? At first glance, it might seem that I was broken, that I had given up. It's been 11 months since I returned home 2 hours early from my Saturday MBA lecture. My 35-year-old husband of 2 years, Brett, had sex with one of the teachers at the school where he was the principal. I stood there, numb, in disbelief, hearing the noise and walking into the bedroom. I don't know how long I stood there before he noticed me. I'm not even sure if I made any sound. When he saw me, he laughed, and she continued to ride him. Then she laughed too. It wasn't a nervous laugh, but a mockery, as if she was saying, "He's mine now, and you just lost, you bitch." I definitely didn't want this kind of marriage. For months he had been pressuring me to invite others into our bedroom, and I had always politely declined. I tried to find other ways to keep the sexual and emotional spark in our relationship, but it was in vain. For him, our marriage became mechanical. He was only interested in new sexual sensations. He wanted me to be slutty. I was no longer a person, wife, or partner to him. I became an object. Without love, without care, only the satisfaction of his desires and the desire to show his power. And his demands became more and more absurd. While they were laughing, I turned around and left the room. 2 minutes later, I was no longer in the house. On Monday, I was already sitting with a lawyer, starting the divorce process. This bastard was dragging his feet in the divorce until I showed him that every additional lawyer hour reduced his share by $300, and we were already out $10,000. He loved to show who was boss. He backed down only when he realized that it was hurting his pocket and that he had already humiliated me enough to feel superior. We didn't have much money. We both made good money, but we had a lot of expenses and debt. He wanted a magnificent wedding, he got it. I wanted a big house, please. The new Mustang, of course. Then he apparently wanted everything else. I definitely didn't want this kind of life. The house had a small property, but no real money would be made from selling it. The house looked great and promised to appreciate in value in the future. He liked everything to look perfect. Chloe, the second-grade teacher, ended up in our bed. Blonde, beautiful, 5 feet tall, and 85 pounds. It would probably have been blown away by a strong wind. And I am strong, but far from fat. But I'm not an air doll, and certainly not ready to become a girl of easy virtue for the sake of such a husband. The divorce took 8 months. He got the house and its payments, his wedding debt, his pretty decent retirement savings, and a 2-year-old Mustang. I got my student debts, my old 1999 Saturn car, clothes, and freedom. It was worth it. I had a job, and student debt was the only debt I had, and he was left deeply in debt, but with toys, including the one in his bed. I went to night school for the last 2 years to get my MBA in finance while working as a low-level accountant. I knew where I was going. He was a popular school principal in the local area. His plan was to become superintendent in a year or two when the current one retired. Then 5-7 years here and move to another area with a higher salary. 90,000 now as a director, 135,000 as a superintendent. But all this is only on the condition that he remains clean. My gift to him was that I was going to change that. Waiting for the divorce to be finalized was a requirement. I wasn't going to risk paying him child support. I kept my plans a secret until our marriage was officially consummated. Then I remained silent for a couple more months so that he would think that he had won and that I had left. It was revenge served cold. From the very day I found them, my 2 sisters, and I began to collect information on them. We decided that we would not invent anything, but would reveal everything that was there. When I left home, I grabbed his work laptop and gave it to my sister May's husband, Rob. Rob is our family computer genius. He is not a network administrator, but a support specialist for several accounting programs at his job. But his skills and curiosity allowed him to move forward. If he doesn't know something, he researches it or consults friends, looks for answers on the internet or from administrator communities. The main thing is not what you know, but where to find the information you need and who can help you. I found them at 11 a.m. on Saturday when I was supposed to be in class. The lecture ended early due to the teacher's illness. After I left the house, I drove around the city for an hour, trying to calm down. I dismissed murder as an option, but it was unlikely. I kept telling myself to calm down and pull myself together. Eventually, I pulled into an empty parking lot in a forest preserve, found a picnic table, and unleashed my anger. I screamed, cried, and punched the benches for about 20 minutes. It was just the top layer of my rage and pain, but even that was a relief. After that, I called my older sister May. May immediately asked me to come to her house to talk. When I arrived, my other sister Liz was already there waiting. And I spoke. Oh, how I spoke. I told about all my attempts to save the marriage, about all the problems. The result of the analysis of 3 hours of conversation. His narcissism turned out to be irresistible. Sisters and family are needed to listen and help process emotions. This process took longer than I could have imagined. It turned out to be difficult, even despite the history of our problems. But I knew one thing for sure: you cannot suppress strong emotions. You can't push pain and loss deeper. We must grieve, grow, and heal the soul. If you don't do this, it will come out and ruin your life. May and her husband Rob insisted that I stay with them. Their house had a furnished, albeit illegal, basement where I could find privacy. Upstairs, there was family waiting for me and communal meals if I needed it. Sometimes I stayed downstairs. Sometimes she went upstairs. Sometimes they would just take me out to eat and be with the people who loved me. Stability, love, and care helped me heal, and I received them in abundance. My brothers-in-law Rob and Liz's husband, Eric, have been waiting a long time for the chance to deal with Brett. They hated him even before all this. That evening, after a busy day, I was completely empty. I collapsed on the couch alone, needing silence. Netflix, with a couple of old sitcoms from the 90s, helped me turn my brain off. And 2 vodka cocktails took me from terrible to simply miserable. This was already progress. Around 9 o'clock in the evening, Rob came up to me with Brett's laptop, which I grabbed on the way from home. Rob was beaming from ear to ear. I raised my head and asked, "Well, found something interesting. I needed some hope in my life. Lucy, do you want the short version or the detailed one?" He grinned. I nodded in response. He laughed. I realized that I had answered yes to the choice question and rolled my eyes. Then she said short with just her lips, and he smiled, and we both laughed. As a school principal, Brett frequently visited obscene websites. On your work computer, during working hours, and through the corporate network. Remember this last point. Most of it isn't your standard sex videos. He was looking for kinky material, mostly about threesomes or foursomes, as far as I could tell. There were many more pages that would take time to study. Lots of chats. I wonder how he even found time to be a director. As you know, this idiot is technically illiterate. He thinks that it is enough to clear the browser history, and that's it. Even if he destroys the laptop, he will not be able to hide his browsing history from the network. It won't even occur to him to think about system administrators and what the network records. He also had pictures of him having a threesome or foursome with Chloe. I don't know who these people are, but we need to find out. It looks like he may have kept some of his forbidden activities visible online. A smile appeared on my face. It was a huge crack in his armor that could have ruined his entire career. All because he was doing something he shouldn't have. I like the public sector and schools. Rob continued, and you know he won't spend the money to hire someone to reset the DSL internet and adjust the permissions in your home. I set up this system for you 3 years ago. Today, I started by copying everything from this laptop to a flash drive. I called a friend and got the spyware that I installed on his work computer. I'll be able to track what he's doing until he completely reinstalls this laptop or until they do a deep scan. I ran a scan and it was full of malicious junk. I left him in this state. It looks like it never ran the check. Unless the laptop itself breaks down, I think there will be no check. You need to bring this laptop home so he can find it later. Do you still have his old laptop in the basement? I nodded. Then get it out and we can probably use it somehow once we come up with a plan. Do you still know your neighbors well? Can you ask them to keep an eye on it when Brett's car isn't in the driveway? I have always had excellent relations with my neighbors. I also knew they didn't like Brett. I called them immediately, and they agreed to let me know when his Mustang was off the road. I received this call on Sunday morning at 9:15. Brett went to church service. He was not interested in religion at all. He went there to improve his status in society and to appear pious and respectable. Was everything he did for show and politics? A bear shitting in the forest? That's when my two sisters and their husbands May and Rob and Liz and Eric got down to business. One pickup truck, 25 empty boxes, and a 2-hour window was all I needed to move into what used to be my home. I took everything that was mine and that I wanted. I left him furniture from my student days and everything that I hated or that we bought together. I moved into May and Rob's basement apartment. He won't bother me there. Brett always hated Rob. He had reason to be afraid after Rob saw how badly he treated me. Rob pulled him aside to talk. It was only because of the witnesses that Rob did not talk with his hands. Instead, he told the idiot that if he ever did something like that again, he would regret it. The marriage was already heading towards collapse. It just gave me a little more time to come to terms with it. When I found them in bed, there was no longer any doubt. Everything was over except the screams. That morning I left the laptop under the sofa where he usually kept it. I took financial documents, tax records, and other legal papers. I've always dealt with this part. I needed to file a permanent change of address and cancel the credit cards we shared. I will cry later. Now the main thing is to survive. Today, 11 months have passed since I found them together. All this time, we were collecting information system data about the dynamic duo. We learned everything we could. Google, Facebook, LinkedIn. We looked for their friends, those who visit the same places. We left almost no stone unturned. We started with Brett, his love Chloe, and their friends. We learned everything we could. Google search, Facebook friends, LinkedIn. We looked for people who frequently visited the same places. We left almost no stone unturned. We did this for everyone we studied. We also looked at people on the school board and the local parent group, which is heavily involved in the school. She was a second-grade teacher, and we needed to find out who was in her class and who their families and friends were. Who knew who trusted who was connected to whom, who we could get acquainted with, who had the power or could make a fuss. The new business software I learned in class helped organize this information. It was a little difficult to master, but this knowledge will be useful in the future. People from school were also on the list. His immediate staff, those subordinate to him, and teachers in general were all studied. All this was done quietly. He was very popular with parents and the school board. He was a true terror to the teachers, staff, and their small group of technicians. We found out who his friends are, their friends, and those who frequent their bar completed our research. We have also identified his threesome and foursome partners. While we were collecting information, we were constantly adjusting plans, areas of interest, and adding plans for collecting future information. The plan had to be flexible from the start and change along the way. It was no longer a matter of ego or anger. It was a project, and I was the project manager. From all of this, I realized that the best thing for me and this marriage was to end it. It would have been better for everyone else to expose Brett and Chloe's actions. Let them destroy themselves. I don't need to invent anything or throw anything in there. Even though he was a two-faced bastard who didn't care about anyone but himself, I still wanted to look in the mirror every morning and see him as a man with dignity. We have collected enough information to get a clear picture of this little love couple. She followed him and bragged about it to her friends. He picked up on this and suggested that she bring a couple more people for his threesome or foursome. They had been doing this for months before I noticed them. We found out that 2 of them were teachers at his school. Chloe was a jealous, angry bitch with a daughter complex. She was deeply in debt, emotionally weak, thin-skinned, impulsive, and immature. She burned bridges with her family years ago. She also had a little person complex. She always had to prove that she was better, even when there was no need for it. By the way, did I mention that she is angry and impulsive? It was like music to my ears. For months, we observed and assessed their weaknesses. We found where people were seriously angry with them. We have seen where their actions, both individually and together, will lead to emotional, social, or financial harm. We had enough material to work with. I was counting on his narcissism and her immaturity, and this opened up a number of possibilities for us. We chose carefully, thinking through the probabilities and risks. There were many areas that we left alone. These areas could give us away or wouldn't be worth the effort or could hurt innocent people. Sometimes the plan will still affect the not entirely innocent. Our plan was to only target the bastards first. We tried our best, but we couldn't pinpoint whether there would be any collateral damage to the not-so-innocent. We did everything we could. The planning process itself was wonderful. He gave me purpose, experience, and helped me heal my wounds. The more I learned about him, the better I felt about what I was doing. Seeing him face the consequences of his actions would mean removing him from his current school and would ensure that there would be no future schools for him. The information collected gave me reasons for divorce. She showed me that he was not worth reconciling. It would be a wasted effort if I had my mind set on it. He was a jerk, but it's still hard to end a marriage. In a month, I will turn 31 and I will start all over again. It will be okay. I can handle this. Another thing that I liked was that I was able to use the knowledge gained during my studies in practice. Well, is everything in order? I got the delightful, let's take these bastards apart. We clinked glasses of wine. It was somehow fitting that we were drinking a dark Sicilian red, expensive wine that Brett loved. Eric began by saying, "We all agreed that Lucy should not have a single lead in this case, right?" 4 affirmative nods. "It shouldn't be from May or Liz either, right?" Nods again. "First of all, let's start with his relationship with Chloe. The trust between them must be destroyed. Her thin skin needs to be damaged, and then their connection will fall apart and be destroyed. They frequent Barley's on Main Street near downtown. I have a couple of Marine friends who are coming over in a couple days for a week. They agreed to help. They have pictures and videos of him and her, so they know what they look and sound like. Lucy, again, what kind of scar does he have? Brett once used a controlled substance and shaved his hair between his legs in college. It's a nasty 3 centimeters long scar. It's not deep, but noticeable. Is that enough, Eric? Great, because my guys will be chatting in the toilet while the bastard is in there. And yet, you said that he was not circumcised. They will make noise about her complaining that he doesn't take care of himself. I winced. This was true for me. All 4 laughed. They've heard about this before. They will also be talking about a fictitious threesome that Chloe had over the weekend, and that she constantly ignored him. It was while she was attending a cousin's wedding in Battle Creek. She was staying at a hotel on the highway. Good start. We all nodded. The rest of the weekend will be sorted out for him. By the way, I have 2 people who will be at the bar with their phones recording everything for us. We won't be completely out of the loop. Now it's Robert's turn. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. One of my friends knows a network administrator in a school district. This administrator hates the bastard. All he needed was one casual comment while they were drinking at the bar. My friend said I should have seen his eyes light up. He immediately understood what needed to be done and how it should look in court. After a short conversation, he agreed not to disclose the information immediately. Since then, the administrator has been collecting network history files and preparing them for presentation to the school board and police. The bastard may have visited sites he shouldn't have visited, sites no one should visit. One more thing the bastard doesn't know about network copiers and his color photo printer. How many of you know that new devices usually store everything they print or copy on their large hard drive? All. Rob looked at us. We were stunned. Is Big Brother watching the copiers too? Rob continued, I don't know all the details, but I do know that every page is recorded with a date and time. Brett printed out pictures of himself, Chloe, and some of their partners for a threesome. It looks like some of them didn't know they were being filmed. This will all be on the agenda. There will be no way to deny this to the school board. The computer ID is also associated with the entry. So even if he kills his computer, he's still screwed. All the administrator wanted was approval and then a chance to watch the bastard burn in flames as he watched himself fall. The bastard wouldn't be the first to burn in the school district. Apparently, they never learned not to piss on those under them. At this point, the administrator has gathered enough information to make this bastard a serious embarrassment to the school board. Nobody could recover from this, especially in the public sector, in local schools. My friend says that this administrator is also going to leak the leak to the local newspaper. Thank God for the Freedom of Information Act and parents who want good people in their schools. There will be no silence here. My eyes turned to my sisters, May and Liz. They looked very pleased. May started first. You won't believe it. Well, you probably will. That bitch Chloe, excuse my French. Everyone laughed. May has always cursed since she was 15 years old. She has been following married and busy guys since she was a girl. First I stole someone's boyfriend, and now, oh, I can't stop. She paused, and then continued with a smile. And I managed to find and talk to the last 3 partners of her former lovers, 2 of whom were girlfriends and 1 of whom was his wife. One of them will take care of the next stage. Just like Eric, Chloe will hear about how a couple of women had sex with Brettum while she was out of town last weekend. They will use some of their out-of-town relatives who are only there for the wedding. If I remember correctly, Lucy, does Brett have a special way of doing dirty things? I nodded yes. Okay, that's what they know. Considering this and the scar and not maintaining cleanliness. She smiled and took another sip of wine. I love snide women with character. For the first time, she will be on the side. Liz started talking. I was able to talk to Rick, the girl's boyfriend, in one of 3 ways. Looks like Diana did it behind his back. When he found out, he immediately left her. Looks like he bought her a ring and was going to ask her to marry him. At first, he wanted to take revenge on Diana. Then I told him about some of the things Chloe and Brett did to others and that they got Diane drunk. He softened a little, still angry, but noticeably softened. It was then that he said that he would only follow Brett in the dark when Brett was alone. As for Chloe, he'll think of something else later. He knew before I even talked to him where and when Brett and Chloe would be. His plan is the very visible black and blue markings on Brett's face in the dark. Very quietly, Liz added, "It's a good thing I don't know about it. Diane and I have a mutual friend, and I asked my friend to talk to her. This was not what met the eye. She didn't want to lose her boyfriend, and Diane was Chloe's friend, and Chloe told her that this is what her boyfriend demanded. He was supposed to be there later that evening. Chloe just found another partner to share with Brett, who left town after she was dumped. We talked about other attack vectors that we ruled out. Damage your car, damage the cars or reputations of your other sexual partners while they were there. We identified those who were married and did it on the side without the knowledge of the partner. It will be their problem if all this comes out. There were other things that we ruled out, but we had fun planning it. He leaked his information to scammers, gave away his usernames and passwords to his financial accounts. We were considering giving him cloth diapers for a month. This would place it on dozens of lists and marketing plans. Send sex toys to his office at school. His secretary opens all the mail and packages in front of everyone. We did not feel responsible for any of the photographs stored on the copier's hard drive. This was beyond our control and could be directly related to him. If these photos become public, we could expect even more fireworks displays in the future. It's time for me to take stock. Resume. On Saturday at Barley's, Chloe overhears Brett having sex with other women. Next weekend, or wherever we arrange it, it will be Brett's turn to have sex with other women. The system administrator begins to leak information that Monday and 9 days later on Wednesday, the school council meeting. I think it's going to be a fun weekend, don't you? We need to be in a very public place, away from that bar. How about we go to Greece on Saturday evening? May, call our waiter Nick and order another bottle of Reditas. Eric is squeezing the empty one dry, and I think he's going to hurt his hands. We all laughed. Slightly tipsy, we watched as a much tipsier Eric tried to squeeze more wine out of our third bottle. It was quite funny. Rob was DD today, and I know May has a bottle of Knob Creek as payment for when we all get home. 5 of us ate at our favorite Greek restaurant, Spiro's. On the other side of town, our plan to pay back my ex and his prostitute Chloe began to come to fruition. Tonight, several unknown women were talking in the bathroom while Chloe was present. They were going to go into detail about damn Brett when she was out of town, how he kept reproaching her for being a lousy girl, but that she was only good at pimping partners for his 3 and 4 ways. They gossiped about how he bragged about how good he was at lying to his partner until he found the next one with more money and better breasts. Chloe was embarrassed that she didn't have enough money. It would begin to destroy their little love nest, rattling all her buttons. Towards the end of dinner, May received a call. She raised her hand to silence us, and her face became very serious. She put another finger in her other ear so she could hear better in the noisy restaurant. She was silent, but the intensity of her face completely reassured us. We couldn't tell if this was good news or bad. Finally, she said goodbye and turned to us. We will need to change plans. Rick and Diana arrived separately. Diana confronted Chloe when she got her drunk and told her that her boyfriend Rick wanted a threesome. She didn't want to be a part of it, but she didn't want to lose him. She started to talk Chloe out of it, and Chloe started to deny it. After a couple of minutes, Chloe had enough and started taunting Diane about getting her drunk and having sex. This calmed everything down. At the bar, Chloe was getting louder and louder when Brett, being a little drunk, slipped and pushed Diana to the floor. May stopped and smiled. Diane's ex-boyfriend Rick came out of nowhere and kicked the asshole between the legs, screaming at him to never hit a woman. The crowd didn't need to push Rick away. I think he learned something in criminal justice class. A classic case of the active defense of a woman who was publicly attacked by a man. Chloe started talking about calling the police. Rick started laughing and then told everyone that the arrest would include the entire episode and would be on the police report, a public document. It will be all over the city before they even get home. We all know that the last part is complete nonsense. It would have taken a few days, but I think it worked. Shocked both of these idiots. They were clearly shocked. They never seemed to think that all they represented could emerge from the shadows. Meanwhile, Rick and Diana quickly and quietly left together, holding hands. So far, nothing good has come out of this, other than your divorce, Lucas. Brett and Chloe retreated to the back of the bar and left quietly after 5 minutes before anything more happened. The whole plan we made for Chloe failed. It didn't happen. We opened our 4th bottle of wine and finished our dinner. Then we moved on to coffee and dessert. That's when Eric's, May's, and mine's phones started receiving photos and videos from people who were at the bar. We quickly finished dessert and left, leaving Spiro's to recharge at May and Rob's house. Now it's time to plan the next step after we've looked at everything we've been sent. We downloaded some video files onto my laptop and connected it to my 27-inch TV. The show couldn't have been better. Here they are, on the dance floor of the bar, their dirty laundry hung out for all to see. We saw others filming this moment too. Diana really trashed Chloe for everything she did to her and other people. She listed the numerous affairs Chloe had started to check the box. How Chloe boasted that she could have any man she wanted, the lies she told, how she boasted about getting Brett, her real lover. 10 minutes of Chloe being a worthless person. Then Diana moved on to the fact that Chloe is now just a pimp. It was the comment about pimping that caused the change in Chloe's face. It touched a nerve. That's when Chloe snapped. As much as she could, she didn't notice that she was being filmed by at least 4 different people. The video showed the entire bar going silent and watching. Chloe was cruel. We reviewed this moment several times. Your beloved Rick didn't want a threesome, But you threw away all the beers I gave you to relieve stress, you fool. You stupid drunk idiot. Did you believe me? Brett took off your clothes after Rich didn't come. How fucking stupid you are. I'll still drag your beloved Rick into my bed later, just to piss you off. No one will fight me and get away with it. Swallow it, bitch, you lost big, and you'll lose again. Chloe then spat at Diana and raised her hand to slap her. Then Brett stepped between them. It looked like Brett was going to push Diana when he lost his balance on the spilled beer and knocked Diana to the ground. A 6'1" man and a 5'4" woman. It really looked like he was going to hurt her. It didn't look like an accident. Brett's actions were deliberate. The following happened in a matter of seconds. Brett stabilized himself as if on ice and held on so as not to fall. And then, out of nowhere, Rick's foot landed in Brett's groin. The sound of the impact can be clearly heard in the video. After comparing several video files, it could be seen that Rick was initially going to attack Chloe after she spat. But Brett became a target as he ended up on top of Diana as she fell to the floor. The look of surprise and pain on that idiot's face was amazing. He screamed like a little girl. I especially enjoyed seeing my ex get hit between the legs. I was kind of kicked 11 months ago. He was literally kicked. Same degree of pain. There's almost no difference when it's for you. I remembered how I felt when they both laughed at me when they wasted our bed. It didn't go according to our plan, but phase 1 was a success. Having other people in the bar record the confrontation, Chloe's spitting and bullying, the attempted slap, and Diana's fall made it that much better. Some of the files I received were from people we didn't communicate with, but whom I knew. What's amazing is that people wanted me to see it. Seeing Chloe tell the world what she and the jerk did was extremely satisfying. This wasn't the plan. It was even better than our plan, and I really enjoyed it. They called us a couple of times. May was told the women involved in the wedding were disappointed they were unable to perform. They rehearsed, and several of them were actresses in high school and college. They were looking forward to it. However, they liked the show. Others just wanted me to know what happened. I received multiple copies of some of the videos. The number of people in the email addresses to which files were sent increased each time. Now the 5 of us had to evaluate what to do with these lovers. The fact is that in battle, be it a market with a business plan or a real battle with troops, plans become outdated 5 minutes after the start of the battle. They are immediately adjusted on the fly. By learning everything we could, we were able to adjust our next steps. We would change the possible goals because some of the old goals were achieved in amazing ways. None of us are lawyers or police officers, but to our inexperienced eyes, it looked risky. Sexual relations with a heavily intoxicated woman may be considered illegal. Attracting women for sex is also a crime. Even a perfectly legal threesome would not be something that primary school teachers and educators should do in public. None of this would look good in the eyes of the school district or parents of young children. We decided to postpone making a decision. We needed to contact Eric's friends to wait a bit. The main goal was to see what would happen at school that week. We all checked the other addresses in the emails and saw some very familiar names. We recognized 2 school council members, the top chairman at Brett's school, and several parents from Chloe's 2nd grade class. The most notable addresses were those with the domain of a local newspaper. The whole thing went viral. We started searching for videos using these 2 names, and at least one copy turned up online under the title Prostitute Teacher and Easy Girl. On Tuesday evening, May, Rob, and I, as well as Liz, met to exchange information and discuss what to do next. Eric was late at work. Rob learned that the network system administrator was hospitalized with a medical incident. He fell on Saturday and was taken to the hospital in the cardiac intensive care unit and will not be alive anytime soon. May had a friend at school who worked as a substitute teacher. She is not in the public eye, but her rumors are highly rated. It was perfect short friends with access to high places. We learned that on Monday morning the school was in complete chaos. Brett and Chloe showed up to work to be met with stares and laughter and people turning away. Their performance at the bar was widely shared throughout the school. On Tuesday, Chloe took a sick day while Brett remained in his office. When he entered or left the building, everyone looked at him or turned away. We decided to put off making a decision about Eric's C friends. We'll make a decision later in the week, but didn't think we'd need to use them. The situation developed without them. Video recordings were already circulating on the internet, and the process was gaining momentum. We just needed to make sure it didn't get out of control. I felt that we may have witnessed the start of an avalanche by sending a rock down the hill. On Thursday at noon, May received a call from her friend from school. The entire school network was down from Wednesday morning until Thursday morning. Both Brett and Chloe took sick leave, and an interim director was appointed. There were rumors that he was escorted out of the building on Thursday morning with his personal belongings in a box. This was not immediately confirmed. There was notice that a temporary employee from the school district had been appointed to replace the system administrator. We decided to wait and see what happens. I checked with my former neighbors on Saturday, and they said the Mustang hasn't been moved since Thursday morning. Sometimes friends would call me to tell me what they had heard. 5 of us decided to just wait and see. The local newspaper published an article in the next edition about the new principal appointed to Brett's school. There was no mention of why or what happened to Brett. May's friend was assigned a full-time job in Chloe's second-grade classroom. She asked but was not given a reason for the change other than that Chloe was taking a day off. Eric attended the school board meeting. The video was widely circulated, and the council tried to contain the situation. The county's attorney was on scene trying to reassure the public. The board said the principal and teacher resigned Thursday morning. Their actions had nothing to do with the children at school. My old house was listed for sale in the following local newspaper. A few months later, the newspaper reported a sale price that matched the amount I owed upon exit. He must have lost money on commissions, taxes, and prorated taxes, plus several months of unemployment. Chloe left 2 weeks after they resigned. Internet research indicated that it was located somewhere in California. Her Facebook account has been cleared as much as possible. She removed everyone she could. There were rumors that she changed her name through a sham marriage and then divorced a year later. Internet searches for Brett or Chloe always yielded several video links. I doubted that any of them would be able to continue working in educational institutions. Their reputation will be toxic. Selling the house was closure for me. This coincided with the time when I was finishing my master's degree in business administration. I accepted a job offer at an investment firm, using my financial analysis and project management skills. My life moved forward. I started meeting people again. Every day I look in the mirror and respect and like myself. It was the best thing I took away from my marriage. Besides the love and support of family, self-respect cannot be taken away. My phone at work rang right after I sat down with a cup of freshly brewed coffee. This is Officer John Martin of the San Jose Police Department. I am calling to locate and speak with Lucy Przybyłski. That was my name when I was married to Brett, and he pronounced it correctly. No one who doesn't know me or my ex, or isn't a Polish immigrant, can pronounce it correctly. Lucy Przybyłski is my maiden name. I have been Lucy Standard for over 3 years now. How can I help, and please provide a way for me to verify your identity? Okay, I understand. It's very important that I talk to you. Can you call the San Jose Police Department, go to our website, and find the non-emergency phone number there? Ask to be transferred to me, Officer John Martin. I'm sitting 3 doors from the operator, and I'll tell her I'm waiting for your call. I Googled this police department while we were talking and immediately started dialing the number as soon as we hung up. Then I stopped to think a little. What in the world could be connected to the San Jose Police and me, with my former name, and in such a tech-oriented field? I have worked with oil companies, banks, and financial institutions in the Northeast, Midwest, and Canada. No technology, no business with California. After I dialed the number, the phone was answered. Hello, San Jose Police. How may I help you? Is Officer John Martin here? Yes, is that Lucy Przybyłski? She pronounced my name correctly, but I decided not to argue this time. Yes. I'll transfer you to John. A couple of clicks later, I hear, "Thank you very much for calling back, Miss Standard. May I get straight to the point?" I answered yes, and he continued, "Do you know Brett Pryziobilski? I divorced Brett over 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago. I haven't seen or heard from him in over 3 years. I don't even know where he lives. What's the matter?" We were going through his things, and you are listed as his medical power of attorney. Medical power of attorney. This document was signed, notarized, and dated over 6 years ago. I assume you were married to him? He paused while I processed what he said. I muttered, yes. He continued, "The document is still valid, and Brett needs someone to take on this role. A medical proxy is when someone makes medical decisions for another person if they become incapacitated. I immediately redid my document at the very beginning of the divorce. Both my sisters signed up for it. This took away his right to make decisions about my health. Officer Martin, the divorce was far from pretty, and I am very aware that I may refuse to do anything." I heard a muffled yes through the phone. I remember this being explained to me when I was revising my document. I'm sure he's faced rejection before. His voice sounded like someone in their 50s who was close to retirement. Working at a desk is a great place to wait until retirement. "Officer, can you tell me what happened?" "Well, Miss Standard, Mr. Pryziobilski was involved in a motorcycle accident and did not regain consciousness. We are trying to find people to contact, and this call was one of the leads we are working on. This document was found in the top drawer of his desk, and the unfinished letter to you is in his trash can. That's why I called." "What was in this letter?" "To be honest, it was pretty disjointed, and I don't remember everything, but the overall tone was apologetic. Having said that, he's been in a coma for over a day, and it's imperative that we get in touch with someone to get answers and make decisions. Do you know about any other relatives?" Apology? Did it take Brett 3 years to start apologizing? Are you still in touch, Miss Standard? This brought me back to the call. Other relatives? Let me think. He was an only child. His father abandoned his mother when he was 4, and his mother died about 7 years ago. There were no other siblings, and no other living relatives were ever mentioned. It appears that you are the one, Miss Standard. I don't know what happened between you in the past, but it is either you or the state of California that will make decisions for Brett. Would you act in his best interests? Then he continued with a pause. Or will it be better if the state takes care of this, as it is obliged to do? I exhaled heavily. I could even hear myself breathing in disappointment. Would you like me to think about it, Miss Standard? I don't like making hasty decisions. I need to think and weigh everything. I'd like to think about it for a moment. Can I call you back in an hour? I'd like to discuss this with my family. I see it's 8 o'clock in California. Can I call at 9 o'clock? We agreed and hung up. Is Brett in an accident? And am I the only one available? Bad marriage. We got divorced. His life was ruined because of all his pranks. An apology in the trash can, and now no one else. I immediately called Sister May. She couldn't talk for long because she was at work. Then I called my fiancé Dave. He works as a marketing analyst for one of the companies we work with to evaluate different firms for mergers and acquisitions. I dialed the number, and he answered the first ring. "David O'Neill. How can I help you, Lucy? Miss you already. What a guy. It's only been 2 hours since I saw him. He was so different from Brett. Warm, loving, a little shy, mature but loyal and honest. No drama, and he truly loves me, and I love him. He grew up in a family that supported each other, just like I did. I almost didn't pass the test in his family. His sisters knew that I had divorced a famous womanizer. What a polite description to say, fucking asshole. Dave got them to give me a chance. They saw what I was like when he had a medical incident while leaving clients at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange downtown. He endured the pain, but it quickly intensified to such an extent that he fell right on the sidewalk. I was his emergency contact number. He was taken to Rush Hospital. There, doctors discovered an infected abscess. I didn't leave Dave's side until he had surgery and was stable. His family accepted me as one of their own after that. I once tried to miss the birthday of one of his many nephews. Dave gave me a low-key scolding. He clearly said what it means to not show your face. Only a year later, at a dinner with my sisters and their husbands, he got down on one knee and proposed his hand in marriage to me. We moved into his apartment in the West Loop 2 months ago. The wedding will take place in June at his parents' church on the south side of Chicago. They had enough connections to arrange a Sunday wedding at this church, good old-fashioned Chicago political power. Family connections and services are quietly maintained by this extended family. There will be a big wedding with Irish people, and then Slovakian, Lithuanian, Mexican, Polish, African American, a few Shiites, and everyone else who moved to Chicago to be part of the big O'Neill family. Large, close-knit families mean large, inclusive weddings. I have a situation here, Dave. Can you talk for at least 10 minutes? For the next 30 minutes, Dave listened, asked questions, and reminded me of what I had told him before. Lucy, this is not about Brett. This is about you. No one is asking you to give up. Helping those in need is something you can do for anyone. You forgave him diligently, without taking him back, without supporting him, not by making it part of your life, but by forgiving and moving on. This is part of your growth. You decided not to waste your life on anger and hatred. You don't get him back, but be honest, it's about living by your principles, being the best person you can be. Even if he remains a jerk, you know you shouldn't do that to someone who isn't a mass murderer. We talked for another 10 minutes. Dave helped me rethink that revenge and anger were long gone. Even his aftermath after the scene with Chloe at the bar left me empty. He was a jerk, but he was also a real person. He may still be emotionally dangerous. I'm not going to go there. I know what I have to do. He is part of humanity. Should he be punished forever for what he did to me and others? This is not me, and I don't want to be like this. No one should be abandoned in his time of need. I knew that without proper supervision, he had almost no chance. I think that's what I want. It was so helpful to have support from Dave. We have similar values. I have the opportunity to discuss important issues with Dave, especially now. When the time came, I made the first of several calls to California. First to the police, then to the medical center. Brett was in the trauma unit at Stanford University Medical Center in Palo Alto, about a 30-minute drive from his apartment in San Jose. He suffered a concussion with swelling of the brain and a number of less serious internal injuries, as well as a broken arm. Doctors were able to identify several possible injuries to his skull that they were clearly concerned about. Sometimes such injuries go away on their own, and sometimes they can lead to death. He is stable, but is being kept under sedation. The doctors were very worried that they would soon need to make a decision about surgery. There were significant risks in both waiting and immediate intervention. In any case, a decision will most likely need to be made tomorrow. With Dave's blessing and urging, I booked an immediate flight to San Jose. Dave was going to follow me if I felt like I needed him. Taxi home for a quick pack, and then a ride on the L to O'Hare Airport. I was lucky to get through to ZA and be the last one on the flight. I enjoyed the fact that I had to sit between two smokers who fidgeted the entire flight and stank of stale tobacco. Apparently, I was an annoying person in a previous life to deserve this. I had several hotel options, but I decided not to check into any until I could talk to the doctors at the hospital. After the hospital security check, I was allowed to enter. I began to worry why there were so many guards when I was taken to the intensive care unit. Then it dawned on me after 9/11. The number of law firms and high-tech companies in the area gave ample reason to be cautious. When I finally arrived at the door of his room, I could barely see him because of the medical equipment and bandages. But I immediately realized that it was Brett. I noticed a distinctive scar on his left arm, which he received as a child. While I was thinking about this, a nurse came up to me. "Can I help?" "Yes, I'm a medical representative. I'm Brett's ex-wife." "When can I talk to the doctors about his condition?" Are you Lucy Przysabilski? That's what they called me when I was married to him. Now I'm Lucy Standard. She looked at me in bewilderment, and I took out my old canceled passport with the surname Zabilski and a new passport with the current surname. You wouldn't believe how many times having both passports saved me. When I marry Dave, and if I decide to take the last name O'Neill, I will have two canceled passports. A discussion of his condition will be in an hour. I'm afraid you shouldn't wait in the corridor. For now, you should not enter the room until the doctors have spoken to you. At the end of the corridor, there is a waiting room. I'll follow you as soon as this is over. My name is Mary. Brett is my patient, and I will be on duty until 8 p.m. for the next 2 days. I probably looked at her with a question on my face. We work on a schedule of 3 shifts of 12 hours a week. Okay, Mary, I'll go to the dining room to eat. I'll be back in 30 minutes and check in at the nurse's station. She showed me the direction to the elevators. I know hospitals. It's better to be proactive than to rely on them when it comes to someone other than their comatose patient. On the way to the dining room, I passed by the chapel. She was empty, just like me. Well, not completely empty. I was deprived of peace and full of conflicting emotions, good and bad memories, and much more. It was a time of silence, time to be alone with myself. Praying was what I needed. I was lost in thought for a few moments when I realized that 45 minutes had passed. I quickly left the chapel and headed back to the nurse's station. It was similar to what I was told about military service, hurry up and wait, and I had to wait another hour. Granola bars in my bag, a cooler of water, and coffee for the staff helped me get through this time. It was at that moment that I realized why I flew in for 4 hours to take care of a man who was alone. Lucy Price and Zabilski. I shook my head, an ordinary American woman, not like that at all. It was a young red-haired man in a lab coat. Looking at his badge, I realized he was a resident and he looked very Irish. Now Lucy Standard. I am Brett Przysabilski's medical representative. I looked into his eyes and stopped him. It's pronounced Shaw-Bilski. Got it? He nodded, but didn't even try to repeat it. It's time to discuss Brett's condition. Let's go. He took me to Brett's room. There were 2 doctors, Mary, and another nurse. I know I'm not a stupid person, but they were talking in medical jargon. After my 3rd question, they realized that they needed to speak more slowly and immediately translate. I worked in the financial sector, and I was used to dealing with people who try to keep silent about the little things, about those little things that actually make the difference. I learned not to let myself get taken for a ride. This is one of the lessons I learned in my marriage. My straightforwardness played into my hands. A couple of leading questions helped me understand that they understood that I was on topic. Result? They didn't know. Monitor for cerebral edema, possible emergency surgery if necessary. Their concern was if the brain swelling would continue to grow or if a stroke would occur, and so on. I'm not a doctor, I'm a financial specialist. The nurses were helpful after that. A big decision lies ahead if there is no recovery, if his vital signs begin to decline or interventions become pointless. In that case, am I willing to make his life more comfortable and let him go? I never thought I would make a decision like this. Scary. Life and death is what happens when you have other plans. All my life I thought it was life happens when you have other plans. After the doctors left the room, I talked to the nurses a little more. My anxiety subsided a little. After they left, I was left alone with Brett. That's when I settled down on the couch and cried for a few minutes. It's life and death, and there's no one else to be with him. I called Dave immediately after I calmed down so he could help me figure it out. When we finished talking, it was already past 9:30 p.m., and I decided to find a place to stay for the night. The receptionist at the hospital helped me find a hotel with a transfer. At the hotel reception, they recommended a pizzeria with delivery. After the pizza, I fell into a series of nightmares. I never thought that the decision to let nature take its course and let someone go would be so difficult to make. Even with how hard it was and how much it left me exhausted, I was still glad I could be here for him. The next day, I returned to his bedside. The only person I knew in California was Officer John Martin. I had time and questions about Brett's apartment, so I decided to call him. It was nice to hear a friendly voice. We talked for about 10 minutes when he offered to have dinner with me. I politely declined, but he said his wife Mary would join us. She was Brett's nurse. Now that I think about it, I realize that she was one of the few people who could pronounce his last name correctly. Mary was the first nurse I met in the ER, and she was very helpful. What an unexpected tandem, police officers and nurses. Who would have thought? At the end of her shift at 8 p.m., Mary picked me up and we were off. We met her husband John at a cozy restaurant that was 20 minutes away. She offered to pick me up at the hospital or take me to the hotel after dinner. Mary and John were in their 50s and were warm and friendly. During dinner, we chatted about various things. As dinner continued, we started talking about Brett, my marriage, divorce, and why I was here. They were very interested in why I came. I explained, but I was wondering why it was so important. I looked at them both and said, "Honestly, I can't understand why you're both here with me today. Don't you have more important things to do?" Then Mary sharply pushed her husband and said to him with obvious reproach, "Admit it now, Mr. Pernod." Slightly embarrassed, John began to speak. "I brought you here partly under false pretenses. You can be mad at me all you want, but first listen. If you want to beat me, just tell Mary to do it." Mary nodded in agreement, but there was complete seriousness on her face. First of all, the medical power of attorney was real. The threat of government intervention is also real. There is no one competent to sign documents or make decisions for Brett. He reached for a glass of water and took a sip. I knew Brett's father for many years. I shuddered. This was the first time anyone mentioned that Brett's father was alive. John continued. After Junior's accident, I learned that Brett had finally met and talked to his father. For the first time in 35 years. The conversation did not go well. A couple of days after that, an accident happened. It was a single-vehicle accident on a clear, dry day in the middle of the day. No traces of illegal substances or alcohol, no signs of braking, nothing. No one else was involved. As police officers, we searched his apartment. The papers in the trash can and what the elder said showed how he felt. There were enough signs to suggest a possible suicide attempt. By the way, this was not included in the reports. I was shocked. I started to mutter something, but Mary put her hand on mine and quietly told me to wait. John continued. Brett's father's story begins not in Chicago, but in Vietnam. PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. This was the reason that he left his family. He held on as long as he could, but in the mid to late 70s, it became too much. He was afraid of hurting his family. Therefore, the eldest went into obscurity. Many Vietnam veterans experienced the same thing. Warmer climates are less likely to freeze to death at night. The eldest lived on the street or in cheap apartments. Sometimes he would get better and then fall again. I first met him about 30 years ago. We had to arrest him a couple of times, sometimes at his request, sometimes at someone else's. John took another sip of water and continued. A couple of days ago, I found out that the youngest had finally found him. The meeting between Junior and Senior did not go well. When Mary first saw the name, she immediately told me. She heard me talk about my elder all these years. Admit it, he looked at me and smiled. Your surname is not the most common. John, you pronounced it correctly, so you either knew someone with that last name or lived in that area. John continued with a painful smile on his face. Both. I grew up and left Bucktown, at the intersection of North and Ashland, on the northwest side of Chicago, when I was 10 years old. When I was a kid, we didn't call it Chicago. We called him Chicano. It was a poor Polish neighborhood that turned into a poor Latino neighborhood when I was little. Now they're live yuppies or whatever they are called now. Gentrification. In cities, we only borrow from areas. He looked into my eyes intently. I found Brett's birth certificate. It matched everything the elder had told me over the years. As part of my job, I have become very good at finding information. I found out the reason for your divorce, his leaving Illinois, his teaching and work in schools. I also saw the video, but it was filmed after your divorce. As an ex-wife, I knew you could complete the picture. You could help find other relatives. I tried my best, but didn't find anyone. John, your questions helped me put something together in my head. Less than a year after his mother's death, he began to change. Now I understand that he was just running away. He never mourned her. Looking back, Mary interrupted. The past cannot be changed. The question is what will happen when he comes to his senses, or if this happens. What condition will he be in? We all fell silent. Nothing sets priorities like conversations like these. Mary, John, I'll stay here a couple more days to see what happens and support Brett. I took a deep breath to calm my thoughts. If you need to sign a do not resuscitate order, I will do it. I see no point or honor in letting him suffer. I think I would hate myself if he needed it, but I didn't. To be continued in the next part. We'll have to act according to the situation, I continued, pausing to collect my thoughts. John, can you tell me something about his meeting with his father? Do you know what happened there? John sighed. The best I can say is that the older one had another attack. Mary interrupted him impatiently. What he means is that the older one suffered from psychosis. Finally meeting your father, your only living relative, and he's crazy. After all the losses in his life and terrible decisions, this was probably the last straw that pushed him over the edge. I looked at John and asked, "Can I see Brett's apartment? Maybe with what you know and what I know we can understand him better. I'd like to see those letters you were talking about." I fell silent. I need to make it clear that I'm not trying to interfere in his life, I added. I'm engaged and I don't want to end my relationship or restart anything with Brett. I'm here because he's alone now and has no support. I'll try to help, but that's the limit until he learns to take care of himself. Or dies. I paused to digest what was said. I came here because he was alone. And now I find out that you think this could have been a suicide attempt? I closed my eyes and fell into silence for a moment, feeling the need to pray for Brett, for myself. When I opened my eyes, Mary and John were looking at me with attention. Sorry for being a little disconnected, I said. I needed a little support. They looked at me with a question in their eyes, and I added, I needed to pray. John nodded. I went to the Church of St. Mary of the Angels near Armitage. Understand. I smiled. Do you know that people got together and restored this church? It was a huge deal, all through voluntary donations. John smiled. The church is beautiful again. That night I called Dave again and told him my thoughts and feelings. Dave reassured me by telling me I was doing the right thing. He asked me to let him know as soon as possible if anything major changed. Otherwise, he asked me to call in the evening when I was free. Because of the time difference, this would have been just before Dave was getting ready to go to bed. I spent the next day in Brett's room, talking quietly to him. I have been told by several people that sometimes unconscious people can hear what is happening around them. This may bring some peace and answers. I hope this would help him. I felt a little better talking to Brett. When his betrayal was in my face, he was so smug, and I was full of anger and pain, that there was no hope of closing this chapter. Months later, he remained the same, still looking for new thrills, not thinking about anyone except his next. When we decided to reveal the truth about him, I thought it would bring some kind of relief. But all our plans did not come true. His mistress destroyed his world. She did our work for us. I got a little satisfaction from his fall, but in reality, it only continued the emptiness. I used those hours at his bedside to try to close that chapter. I admit it was more on my part than on his. Sometimes I thought I heard a slight moaning, but even when I remained quiet, sometimes I heard them too. In any case, it was not an angry or painful moan. Maybe I'm just fooling myself. No, I'm definitely fooling myself. Mary showed me what gauges and graphs I should pay attention to. There were few changes, both in the indicators and in his condition. We couldn't get into Brett's apartment. John could not find the necessary connections. Having left Chicago and having no one else to help, what's happening to this world? By the end of the second day in the hospital, there were some positive medical signs. The swelling began to subside and his vital signs improved. Some of the more serious problems seemed to be going away. I left with more hope at 8 p.m. and the hotel bus took me back. It's funny, I sat all day. I sat, thought, talked to him, worried and all that. Then I had to drag myself back to the hotel. It would be easier for me if I moved furniture, washed walls, or dug that same ditch all day. At least then I would have a real reason why I was tired. As I entered the lobby, I heard someone call me from behind. "Do you still miss me?" I turned around sharply. Dave stood there with a stupid smile on his face and stretched his arms towards me. In his arms, in his love for me, in his protection, in the way he helps me be a better person. Giving your partner what he needs is much more important than giving him what he wants. A hug and a kiss, and me and my fiancée, we are one with the world. We took his suitcase back to my room and went out for dinner again. The receptionist suggested a place within walking distance. I don't remember what I ate or what I drank. All I can say is that I didn't stop talking for over an hour. When I finally calmed down, I noticed that I had drunk 2 glasses of wine and 8 chicken masala. It was 10 p.m. and I was still on edge. "Lucy." "Yeah, Dave, what happened? Did you hear anything of what I said in the last half hour?" I looked at him in horror. I didn't really remember what he said. He laughed and gently took my hand. "You actually heard everything I said." "What do you mean?" My panic intensified. "I don't remember anything. I don't remember anything." I started to tremble. "Yeah, because I couldn't get a word in edgewise, so I didn't try." And then he burst into laughter, which scared everyone in the bar. "Come to me, my bride. I love you, and this is what you need right now." He kissed me and hugged me. "There will come a time when you will have to listen to me, okay?" I nodded with relief. "Let's go to bed. You must be tired." "How about we just go to bed?" And my hand lightly slapped him on his right cheek and hit his wallet. He laughed and kissed my hand, promising to make everything better. We almost ran back to the hotel. On the way to the elevator, half of his shirt was pulled out of his trousers. Someone saw us get out of the elevator, and Dave turned red as a lobster. It's definitely Dave. He rushed to the room and opened the door with his card. A second after the door closed, we were naked and hugging. This warmth, this touch. It wasn't exactly sexual, but this closeness between us. We are so perfect for each other. A bad marriage taught me to fully understand what I needed. When I woke up in the morning, I saw Dave reading. He should have been up hours before. He was still on Chicago time and got up at 5:15 am. I'm already used to California time. "Well, sleepyhead, are you finally getting up? Did you know, Dave, that breakfast at the hotel will be available for another 2 hours?" When he reached out to me, I realized that breakfast would not be for another hour. It didn't bother me. At the hospital, we were able to talk to Mary and get an update from yesterday. Brett's medical condition continued to improve, slowly, but improving. But it could also get worse at any moment. It was still a waiting game. When it was time for lunch, Dave suggested that I go to the cafeteria to eat while he remained on duty. When I returned, he went to lunch. At that moment, I was not sure that I was helping at all. There was a chance that it would take him days or even weeks to come to his senses. The doctors were confident enough to reduce his sedation in the morning, but it didn't make much difference in his condition, which is a very good medical sign for Brett. Dave and I had dinner at the same place again and spent time with each other again afterwards. Sometimes the physical presence of your love says so much more than words. Dave makes me feel safe, loved, and needed by being there. I know that I am a woman, and women often need more words than men. That's how it is, and that's how I am. But not always, not here, and not now. We were back at the hospital by 9 am and received an update from the new nurse assigned to Brett. Mary took her 3 days off. Dave and I killed time by sitting on our tablets, walking the hallways, checking email, and so on. We may not be working, but the work was with us. When it was time for lunch, Dave told me to go first and take my time. I needed to warm up, and today we agreed that after dinner we would go to the hotel gym. The second way to burn energy. I had a leisurely lunch and walked outside for a bit under the beautiful sun. I know exactly why I'm here. I don't know how long I'll be here, but I know Dave needs to get back, and we already planned for him to leave tomorrow night. I'm starting to think that I'll leave the day after tomorrow. When I returned, I saw Dave pacing in front of Brett's room. He started moaning and moving his arm, so I immediately called the nurse. We need to wait in the waiting room while they examine him. We waited another 45 minutes until Joan, his new nurse, came to see us. He's slowly coming out of his coma, but he's not conscious yet. His eyes are reacting well. You can come in and sit with him, but call us right away if anything changes. In the meantime, I'll do my usual checks every hour. She fell silent for a moment. He's not safe yet. They'll give him another scan in the evening. We returned to his room, where he moaned quietly and tried to move his right arm in a cast. I sent Dave out to get lunch, and he quickly returned. Brett continued to moan like that until we left at 8 p.m. Dave postponed his return to Chicago for another day. He wanted to be here with me. I could have done without him, but I didn't want to. A light takeout dinner, elliptical machines at the hotel, and loving until midnight completed our day. When we returned to the hospital the next morning, we found his room empty. Joanne said he was being scanned and would be moved to a regular ward. He became much more responsive sometime after 10 p.m. last night, and a lot of tests and assessments kept him awake. Brett finally fell asleep at 4 a.m. From a medical point of view, everything looked much better. We went to his new room on another floor to wait for him. By 11:30, Brett had not yet arrived. We decided that I would go to lunch first, and I went to the dining room alone to get something to eat. 3 years have passed, and now I am dating my ex. What should I say? What will he say? Lunch was bland, and I slowly picked at my food, facing my own fears. Finally, I stood up and headed back to Brett's new room. As I approached the door, I heard Brett's voice. It was faint, not loud, but clear and a little hesitant. I walked into the room and saw Brett flinch as I walked into his line of sight. There was clear concern on his face. Dave chimed in with a mischievous smile on his face. "Lucy, I'd like to introduce you to." "Hey, Brett," and the room fell silent. "Hello, Lucy." Brett paused for a second. "Thank you for coming here to see me." He fell silent again and tried to say something, but the words got stuck in his throat. Dave chimed in. "Brett asked me if I was Dave first, so what you've been telling him the last couple of days has actually worked. He heard some of what you were telling him." Brett waved his unbandaged left hand, signaling for us to shut up. "I'm still pretty sleepy, and they don't know if I have permanent damage. My nurse told me to be careful." He exhaled deeply, then stammered, "I don't know how many days it will take to know if I'll have permanent damage. Okay?" At that moment, his nurse came in and asked us to wait a little. "Dave and I will be back in, 30 minutes?" The nurse replied, "Do it at 40 and you'll have a deal. He will finish his lunch if you count the liquid diet as lunch." She laughed and Dave groaned. "He will eat more solid food for dinner. He has another test for which he needs to be blank." Dave and I went to the cafeteria so Dave could get something to eat. "Dave, what did he say? What did he ask?" "What?" "Easy, miss. We still have plenty of time. One thing you could do now is sign up John Martin to come talk to Brett. This will be one of the two most important topics he needs to discuss. You are different." We spent about 25 minutes together. He came right after you entered the elevator. After I introduced myself as Dave, he asked if you were really there. When I said yes and that you had been here for a few days, he asked if I was your Dave. Then he asked why you came to him. I answered honestly, but I don't think he believed me right away. After a short exchange of words, I realized that he was beginning to understand. I asked him about his father. There was pain on his face when he started talking about Signora. Same story John Martin told you. Take the time to contact Martin and find out when he can talk to Brett. He needs these answers, and your problems with him come later. Okay? That was Dave. We must address the most important issues, first the people who need help, and those who are suffering the most. While Dave was eating, I called John Martin, and he agreed to talk to Brett after work that evening. By then, we had started to make our way back to Brett's room. Lucy, please be gentle with him. From what I've heard, he's not the same person he was when you got divorced. His words and thoughts are confused. Just be yourself. By the way, the discharge planner is due tomorrow morning. I think you should be there. I have already changed my flight to 6 a.m. tomorrow. I hope you don't mind, but work calls. I'm wondering if I should take the same flight home. Do you think enough will be done? At the end of the day, he can now make his own medical decisions. Dave shrugged and then shook his head. That was all we could hope for. When we entered the room, Brett was sitting drinking broth and coffee. He smiled warmly when he saw me. I don't remember the last time I saw such a warm smile from him. That was an eternity ago. Why, you came to me after being such a jerk to you. Why, you came to me. There was amazement and gratitude on his face. I sat down next to his bed and took his hand. He squeezed my hand tightly. I heard you sometimes when you spoke here while I was lying there. I thought I was dead. You are the last person in the world I would ever see. Why did you come? There was no one else for you. No matter how much of a jerk you are, no one should be abandoned when they need help. You were in a motorcycle accident. It was after a terrible meeting with your father. It was difficult to continue, and I hesitated a bit. Did you want to hurt yourself? And no, Brett was angry. It was a good sign. There was a sparkle in his eyes. No, that was a great sign. There was a little boy, Spanish, about 8 years old, on a bicycle. He was wearing a Sammy Sosa jersey. Cubes in California, cute losers everywhere, right? He laughed a little and raised his arm in a cast, showing that he was also part of this crowd. He winced in pain, and we both laughed, at his joke and at his own pain. Then he continued. The boy flew off the sidewalk right in front of me. It was the tree or him. He looked at me. I chose a tree. I remember this tree coming closer, all in slow motion. Trees don't lose. The nurse came in. Transport will be here in a couple of minutes to take you to your next test. I need to prepare you for this. You can wait here, but it will take at least 2 hours. Brett raised his voice. I want to talk about us and apologize. Brett, you need to figure out a couple of things. These tests and your father are on the short list. I'm in the long one. See you after the test. The nurse chimed in. He will be very tired after the test and will likely fall asleep before dinner due to the medication and his condition. Don't expect him to wake up. Brett looked at me with intense anger and pain in his eyes. My father is crazy. I can't. After dinner, I will introduce you to Officer John Martin of the San Jose Police Department. He's known your father for 30 years. His wife is Mary, your intensive care nurse. I think he can give you answers. Brett looked at me with apprehension and hope in his eyes. I continued, after this, Dave and I will come back after dinner to discuss this with you and talk about you and us, if you have the strength. We have something to say. At that moment, a vehicle entered the room. I continued, will you wait until then, Brett? Can you do it? He nodded in agreement and pain. I think the pain was not physical, but emotional. We spent several hours in a cafe and walked. Then we had dinner. We walked, it wasn't Chicago. Bright, warm, full of beautiful people, and a driving technological spirit. In Chicago, in the Loop, everyone is working towards financial success. But Chicago is my home and our family's home. This is more important to me than beautiful weather, much more important. As I walked and talked, I realized how important it was that Dave was with me. It's so important that Brett is no longer the same person he used to be. We returned to Brett's floor and saw John Martin talking to one of the nurses behind the counter. The nurse seemed to be a friend of his wife. I asked him to wait while I made the acquaintance. Dave and I walked into the room where Brett looked very worried. Ready to hear about your dad, Brett? Brett nodded again, smiling slightly that his name was pronounced correctly. We always laughed when someone pronounced his last name correctly. I'm Officer John Martin of the San Jose Police Department. Can I sit down? It will take time. With that, Dave and I went for a walk and spent some time in silence. More than an hour later, I received a message from John that he was leaving. Dave and I are back. Brett sat alone, quickly writing something in a notepad. His hand-eye coordination has not yet recovered. I remembered his beautiful, clear handwriting when he was a teacher and principal. Now his letter was torn and illegible. I wondered how seriously he had hurt himself. Brett smiled as we entered. What a difference from when we left. Well, how did it go? Look happier. After looking at me and occasionally looking at Dave, he began, why, you really take first prize, huh? Just because he could pronounce my name correctly, he gets you here, and... I wanted to object. No, Brett, it wasn't that, it was. Laughing, he interrupted me. ISK no, but IS had to play a prank on you. After all the nonsense and nasty things I did to you, you still came to help me. He swallowed hard. I didn't deserve this, not the way I treated you. Brat then looked at Dave. If I ever hear that you did even 5% of what I did to her, I will come and beat you. He raised his arm in a cast and closed his eyes in pain. We all laughed, but suddenly his face became very serious. John knew my father for about 30 years. They didn't get along at first, but over time the respect began to be mutual. PTSD. John said there were a lot of veterans on the streets who came back with him. Some cops treated these guys well, and that helped everyone. My father was in bad condition. He was in the hospital several times, serving a little time for minor offenses. He didn't beat anyone. He didn't rob anyone. He robbed construction sites and then did a lot of digging in dumpsters for scrap metal. But he didn't harm anyone. He drank a lot and took illegal substances and took treatment himself. John studied my father's military records, looked at his arrests in connection with cases or in mental hospitals when they were brought in. My father saw the fight. John believes that the tunnel war was what broke him. I interrupted. Tunnel war? They both started to answer, but Brat started to stutter, so he nodded to Dave. The Viet Cong could not build fortifications where we could see them and drop bombs or aim artillery, so they dug tunnels. It was cheap and easy. American soldiers sometimes entered these tunnels to find intelligence, set traps, capture prisoners, whatever. Short guys were in demand. Imagine what happens when they get shot there. I read that it was important to get our bodies back. War is initially hell. Brat then continued. My father came to Southern California, treated himself just like the Vietnam period, and began using the same things he did at home. My face became full of question marks. Brett continued. John used this term to refer to an illegal substance. In Vietnam, he took whatever he could get his hands on. But the most important thing John told me was that he didn't mean to hurt my mother or me. I was only 4 years old, but as a child, I always thought that I had done something wrong. Mom didn't talk about Dad. Here Brat bent his face and then took his head in his hands and began to cry. I leaned over and hugged him, and he cried for 10 minutes. Dave stood behind me and held my shoulders as I shook with tears. A huge weight was lifted from his shoulders. A smaller weight fell from mine. Brett and I spent the next 45 minutes talking about it, what it meant to him, how it affected him, and finally his first feeling of relief. John offered to be there when the younger and older met again, when the older was more stable. Brat learned that his father was deteriorating. Living with chemicals and on the street took its toll. He's still healthy enough to be independent, but for how long? We were still discussing this when the nurse came and quietly informed us that it was after 9, and that tomorrow was a new day. Brat needs more rest. Brett extended his hand to Dave as he said goodbye. Dave's flight was at 6 the next morning. Instead of taking Brat's hand, Dave leaned over and hugged him tightly. The shock on Brat's face was amazing. I followed him and also hugged my former scoundrel. He looked at me gratefully. Dave took a taxi to the airport, leaving at 4 a.m. to avoid possible travel delays. We both hate flying for this reason. I fell asleep again for a few hours. After breakfast at the hotel, I returned to Brat's by 9 a.m., just as the discharge planner was leaving. Brat, what plans has she made for you? Not yet. She had to find out which of her relatives or friends could help. No plans because they don't know when I'll be discharged or what I'll need. Maybe a nursing home for a couple of days. He became quiet when I sat down next to him. I, I heard what you said about how I treated you. He looked at me with intensity. There was grief and concern in his gaze. You forgave me and moved on. I think you have found a better husband now. Yes, I'm going to leave this one. If you don't leave me, I'll come and kick your ass and... Brat, don't raise your hand this time. This will hurt. Lucy, the physical therapist, came earlier. This is one of the things I need to do. He grimaced as he raised his hand again. Physical therapy does not mean physical therapy, but pain and torture. I can't avoid pain like I have done all these years. I have to work through the pain now. We both knew that would be key to his future, working through the physical and emotional pain to get to the other side. I needed to apologize to you. I treated you like a thing, like garbage. I started cheating 6 months before you saw me in bed with her. I chose a needy, weak, and problematic woman that I could control, and I paid for it. Paid in full. Lost my job, my home, my career in school districts. Mostly I lost my wife and my self-respect. I enjoyed it, and you got what you didn't deserve. We were both silent for several minutes. It was real, it was honest, it was closure. Closure is important. I didn't immediately give up my old habits. Moved to California and found a job in sales. I tried several different areas of business. One didn't work out because I got back involved with the daughter of the corporate director of that firm. He fell silent and pointed to his feet. My right knee is new now. Didn't expect this. I didn't know who did it, but I knew who gave the order. I deserve it. I recovered alone and got through it. That's when I decided I would never target weak women again. I can't afford it. His face showed pain as he moved and stretched his muscles. I can't afford this emotionally, physically, and certainly economically. That's when I started to put myself in order. As part of this, I started searching, and 2 years later, I found my father. I thought I was bad, but I arranged it all myself. Despite all the wonderful people around me, I am still myself. I arranged it for myself. Dad was an 18-year-old boy at the front from an alcoholic home, facing the reality of life and death. His probable death was the biggest worry, followed by the deaths and injuries of his friends in the Corps. John said he knew that Dad had killed several people in hand-to-hand combat. John said that Dad still has nightmares about this topic. I have nothing to complain about. I have nothing to whine about. Brett pulled a tissue out of the box and dabbed his eyes. Well, over the last 2 years, I've started to apologize for what I did. Brett, when John Martin called, he said there was a letter in your trash can addressed to me. A letter of apology. I've never seen it. Brett looked at me. Have you seen it? There were a bunch of them, whole stacks of them. Then he looked at me with a guilty expression. Wait a minute, they're in the trash folder on my computer. There's all these letters. I typed about one a month. I wasn't the right person for you. I always wanted more thrills, more sex, and more danger. I loved you, but now I understand that I loved myself more. We weren't right for each other, and I went for it. What I wanted, behind your back. I tried. Yes, it's true, Lucy, you tried. You drew a line in the sand that was pretty far from what you were comfortable with, and you crossed it for us. For over a year, I tried too. And then I started to lose myself when one beautiful girl offered me her company at the bar. When you went to the toilet, she came into my room for a few minutes. I should have told her no. I should have gotten up and left. Instead, when she gave me her number, I took it. You didn't deserve this. Over the next 6 months, I became a real bastard, full of self-righteousness. But, no, let me finish. I've been working on this for months. I need to get it out. and then you can scold me. I heard real honesty from Brett, real painful honesty that was hard to hear and hard to say. Tears appeared in my eyes, and I grabbed a napkin. Then I looked at him and nodded. I stopped seeing you as a person, as my wife, whom I loved, as a partner. I got my wits from using people as sex toys, and then forcing others to bring me these toys. I became a master at this. I manipulated, preyed on the weak and greedy. I liked this moment of power. I didn't do anything wrong. What I realized is that I chose not to grow up. I'm just an almost 40-year-old student who doesn't care about anyone else. And that's when my whole world came crashing down in the bar when Chloe ratted out. I pushed her hard. I liked to control her. She would do anything for me, especially be my pimp. 2 days later, her eyes went blank and she disappeared. She ran away from the city. I was able to find her about a year ago. I tried to apologize, but she pulled out a gun. He laughed a little. I'd deserve that too. He shook his head regretfully. I never expected to hear this from him. I never expected such honesty. His fall to rock bottom changed him. Now that his ex showed up at his hospital bedside to take care of him when he couldn't, and then this father, don't worry about me, I'll survive. Brett, he looked at me. He looked at me the way he once did when we were just dating and just getting married. When will you stop being a survivor and start living your life? When will you choose to grow and become a healthier Brett who can love and be loved? I heard his long sigh, but something has changed. It wasn't a big change, but I'd known him for so long that I noticed it right away. I realized that maybe he wasn't hitting rock bottom anymore. The pain was still on his face, but I saw a hint of a smile, a hint of hope. Once you get better, you will be able to help someone here who needs you badly, your father. You may not be able to do much, but whatever you do will be more than he can do for himself. I remember you as a new teacher. You loved helping children. Go back to helping others and your life will get better. Then maybe your next relationship will be better. You're a smart guy who made a lot of stupid decisions. You have a future. We were silent for a couple of minutes. I saw how his thoughts were spinning, but despair did not come out of him. He looked inside himself. He shook his head, as if to clear away some memory, and then looked at me. Lucy, I'm still a work in progress. He tensed his body, expecting me to start scolding him. I need to hear from you. You need to tell me what I did to you. You may have told me that when I was lying here, but I think you need to tell it when I'm conscious. He inhaled and held his breath. Don't hold back. Now I was afraid that I would have to say. I went through my feelings, but I knew that the anger and rage was still inside me. We had problems for months, if not years. I wanted this marriage to work, to last. You kept pushing me to do riskier things. I went in that direction. But it was never enough for you, Brett. Never not enough. My anger and rage began to bubble up. I tried to move on for so long, but I still had so much anger inside me, anger that he needed to hear. The anger I should have said. Your power games, making me feel, not like a wife, playing games. Like a street girl of easy virtue. We weren't on the same page. I was becoming a thing for you. At this point, Brett tried to say something, but I waved my hand at him to keep quiet. No, now it's my turn. Be in control, be in charge, be strong, that's your motto. When I suggested counseling, you exploded. From what you said, it was a couple of months after you started sleeping with Chloe, right? Brett nodded. I felt so empty, powerless to do anything to save this marriage. I had already researched what I needed to do to end our one-sided marriage. So when I came home early that day, and you shoved your betrayal in my face, I immediately made a decision. I have to tell you that I was preparing to take revenge on you coldly, and in such a way that you wouldn't even realize that it was me. On the same day and in the same place where Chloe experienced her hysteria, all this began to happen. Brett opened his eyes wide. Yes, Brett, your sweet ex-wife was about to start ruining your little love. I stared into his eyes. We didn't have time. I had everything set up to bring serious doubt into her world with you. And then next week, doubt your world with her. And then someone inside the school was going to expose your emails to the school board. Chloe cut it all off. All I got was to hear you fall. Lost Chloe, lost respect, lost your job, lost your house, and then disappeared. You know what, Brett? He looked at me with regret. And your collapse gave me absolutely nothing. My anger was already bursting out. Didn't give me shit. Brett shuddered. I have never been rude or indecent. I was left feeling empty. I hated what you did to me, what you became. You weren't always like this, but that's how it ended. You fell into the fire. And me? All that was left for me was this is bitterness. And I hated it too. So I started dating someone to get help. It took me a while, but I realized I didn't want to live in bitterness. I needed to forgive you, and then move on. Not to accept you, not to love you again, not to respect you like I once did, not to be a part of you. None of this, but to forgive and move on. Now I was wiping the tears from my eyes. These were things I never thought I'd tell you. I didn't think you wanted to hear them. I didn't think that I would ever talk to you openly about real feelings, about honesty. Lucy, you came back to me. With everything I did to you, you came back. Now he was wiping his eyes. I can't tell you how sorry I am. Words can't express it. You have always been a wonderful person. The problem is that you fell in love with a fool obsessed with himself. I stopped thinking about other people. Everything was just about me. I think it's still like that. You're wrong. A question appeared on his face. Tell me about that tree again. Then a smile appeared on his face. I chose a tree, didn't I? What about your father? Don't you have plans for him too? Now there was a bitter smile on his face. What else have you done since you got your new knee? To get out, I started volunteering at a junior league. Even went back to church. Am I supposed to stay away from bars unless it's a business meeting? He laughed a little. Brett, that doesn't sound selfish. More like the Brett I knew before he got lost. I could see Brett looking inside himself. He started to look hopeful. By the way, John texted me today. He has a couple of visitors that you should meet today. You should wait to find out who it is. It's his surprise, not mine. Brett, we've both moved on. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's an atmosphere of forgiveness between us now. He nodded in agreement. I moved on until I felt called here again. But you worked on it too, didn't you? Have you forgiven yourself? I haven't gotten to that point yet. Having you here has changed a lot. Your gift to me. I am indebted to you again. You forgive, you saved, and helped me reconnect with my father. We both fell silent. The hardest part, the closing part of our meeting was completed. There was no need to meet anymore. So, Lucy, this is the moment when you say goodbye and... You're right. You've gotten better, and we have closure. My work is calling me again. Tomorrow morning at 1:30 am flight that will get me to O'Hare before 6 am short stop at home, then off to work. We talked for another half hour. Brett didn't have much strength. He was still quite weak and needed to rest. I went out for lunch and then enjoyed the fresh air for 2 hours. I was finally getting some peace in my life with Brett. As bad as it was, as disgusting as he was, now seeing him return to the Brett I once knew made the trip worth it. I returned to Brett's room at 1:20 and saw that he was not alone. John Martin was there with a blonde woman of about 30 and a young Hispanic boy who was no more than 10 years old. The boy was wearing a baseball jersey. This is the most famous baseball jersey. Brett began, Lucy, I'd like to introduce Rick and his mom, Grace. She grew up on Wood Street in John's old neighborhood, just off Milwaukee Avenue. It was a long time ago after he moved out. Grace extended her hand to me. Nice to meet you. Brett saved Ricky by crashing into a tree. He had just gotten a new bike and wasn't paying attention. It took a few days, but Ricky finally told me about it, and we went to the police to find out what happened. Officer Martin helped us meet. I have to thank Brett personally. I don't know what I would have done if Ricky had gotten hurt. Brett asked about her and Ricky's life, and she told us her story. She was a single mother. Her boyfriend began using illegal substances and then turned to selling them when they moved from the cold winters of Chicago to the warm San Francisco Bay Area. After Ricky was conceived, he returned to his hometown in Mexico and was never heard from again. She raised Ricky while studying and trying to make ends meet. They have a small house and Ricky is a good student. She experienced a difficult life, but did not complain. It turned out that Ricky played on one of the league teams that Brett coached. She had to take him out of the league because the shifts at her job changed. Brett's nurse came in and said the doctors were there to discuss his condition and plans. Brett spoke up. "Lucy, could you stay on this for a moment? Grace, John, can you wait?" Gracia and Ricky, along with John Martin, were directed to the waiting room. A minute later, the doctor's discharge planner and social worker came in. He will have a few days to a week in a nursing home for rehabilitation until Brett is strong enough to care for himself. Just a couple more weeks for everything to heal. His memory and cognitive functions recovered quickly. His motor skills were improving, and he was scheduled for 2 more days in the hospital with physical therapy and occupational therapy. This is not such a bad outcome considering he hit a tree at about 40 kilometers per h on a motorcycle. His soft suspension Harley bounced off several rocks and concrete walls as well as a tree. Now it can be used for spare parts. The insurance company will be the owner. The social worker called Brett's employer and they agreed to the plan. His eloquence with clients and new sales over the past 18 months have been in demand. Once he is able to make phone calls even while lying in bed, he will return to work. After the conference, everyone returned. John quickly apologized, telling Brett that he would contact him about his father. Then Grazia, Ricky, and I came to visit Brett. When Grazia asked, Brett talked about post-hospital plans, including a nursing home and long-term recovery. That's when I noticed it. Grace asked Brett very detailed questions. At first he looked cheerful, but it seemed that even he was beginning to hear something different. The conversation became erratic and touched on many different topics, including church. It turned out that they both attend the same parish church and both love the same assistant priest, Father Roberto. It was about 4 p.m. and Brett was starting to get tired again. At this moment, Grazia and I said goodbye. Brett asked me to come back later. There was something he needed to say. "No problem, Brett. You rest and eat normally like they told you to. I'll be back after dinner." Grazia then said, "Thank you again, Brett Pryzabilski. Thank you for my son." As we walked along the corridor to the elevators, I turned around and asked, "Grace, would you have dinner with me? I'm treating it for both of us." Ricky could barely contain his childish restlessness in the ward, but now he was beginning to lose patience. He jumped up and said, "McDonald's? Mom, can we go to McDonald's?" I nodded, and Grazier realized that she was in the minority and agreed. She had an old car, and she took us to one McDonald's, which was not far from the hospital. After we ordered, Ricky asked permission to go to the gaming area. With permission, he immediately disappeared. Grazia and I started talking about parenting, Chicago, and various things when I asked if I could ask a serious question. "I know I'm the ex-wife, but I noticed you're interested in Brett." Her face turned a little red, and she nodded. "That's fine, but you just met him." "No, that's not entirely true. I was there every day for baseball practice for those few weeks. He was a great coach, patient and kind to all the kids, even the ones who were in the way. He cared about the kids and supported them. I've been raising Ricky alone all his life. The first test for dating someone is how well they get along with my son. Ricky comes first. I go on dates every couple of months and most guys fail this test. Most of them wanted me to keep the baby. Sorry, my son is my life. We are a team. Now I see Brett Pryzabilski stand up for my child. He could have died. Did you hear him talk about what Ricky did? No, not a word of condemnation. Did you see Brett trying to communicate with Ricky when we were talking and Ricky fidgeting like crazy? Yes. I nodded in agreement. In these couple of days, Brett hasn't said anything bad. Not even a hint of anything negative about your son and what happened. Lucy, Brett is suffering and will need recovery. The least I can do for him is help him recover. Is there a chance? He seemed so independent. We talked for about an hour while Ricky let out his childish energy. When we finished, we exchanged phone numbers and email addresses. She knew Brett had lost himself, and that's why their marriage ended. But now he may have found himself again. Time will tell, time will tell. Returning to Brett's room, I saw him looking out the window, tears rolling down his cheeks. He wiped them away when I made a sound. I didn't hear you come in, Lucy. I was in my own thoughts. Want to share, Brett? Not necessary. I just got a second chance at life. Not with you, but with my father falling apart. With you, I finally got closure. After everything I did to you, you were such a better person than I ever was. I started to smile, and with a grin in my voice I said, "Nonsense, Brett, nonsense. I don't think I would ever stand under a tree for anyone other than my family. No, Brett, you're becoming the Brett I once was." New. The big question is, can you stay with Brett this time? He wiped away a few more tears and looked out the window again. I left him in silence. More than 5 minutes passed before he turned to me. The day after my knee surgery, they started forcing me to use it again. The pain was terrible, and I was swearing like a cobbler until the senior physiotherapist came in and sat me down. She said without exercise right away, I would lose mobility. This would cripple me for life. I feel like what I became a few years ago will cripple me for life. Brett, is that daughter the last woman you were with? He nodded. So you've been sitting on the bench for the last 2 years? He nodded again. You were healed, weren't you? He nodded again. So when will you come back to life? He shook his head. I have a few months of recovery ahead of me. I'm looking at a week in a nursing home for physical therapy, and then I have to figure out how to continue working and doing physical therapy. I'll find a way, but I feel lost. The worst thing is that you're here. I was a little surprised. No, that's not how I understood it. What I wanted to say was that you showed me what I've lost. I know you'll be a great wife for Dave, and he'll be a great husband. Then he smiled. If not, I know you can overcook him, like you almost overcooked me. We both laughed. Sorry, Lucy, I'm just complaining about myself. I dug this hole. I shouldn't complain about falling in it and getting dirty. Brett, do you really think you're alone? He nodded. There was just someone here that you owe a lot of money to. Unfortunately, she's a strong woman with a child, and she won't put up with any nonsense from anyone. She's a survivor too. Why don't you consider letting her in? Your life, at least a little, she wants to pay you back. You stood under the tree for her child. His face lit up. We continued talking about his future and then about mine, but there was no talk about our future. By the end of the evening, we began to feel comfortable with each other again. Acceptance and distance at the same time, if this is understandable to anyone at all. As I stood up to say goodbye, Brett made a request. Can I have Dave's address and email? Why Dave? If I ever decide to send you something, I want him to see it first. I don't want anything to come between you two. It's okay. Okay. Handing him Dave's business card, I shook Brett's hand one last time. I'm sorry for the way I treated you, Lucy, and thank you for being who you are. Take care of yourself. It was my pleasure to close things out with you, Brett. I wish you all the best. You have a future to achieve. Keep Dave updated on how your recovery is going. Keep him posted. With these words, I left his room. 2 months later, I became O'Neill at a packed wedding. There were so many people there that I would never meet again. Lots of smiles and nods. 2 weeks later, as Dave and I were opening our wedding gifts and cards, I discovered one with a San Jose postmark. It was a beautiful card and a very generous gift from Brett, Gracia, and Ricky. Although the envelope had 2 different sender addresses, all 3 signed the card. The photo was of the crashed tree and the 3 of them, Brett hugging Ricky and Gracia standing nearby. There were crutches at the edge of the picture. Dave was looking at the card when I suddenly realized something. I ran to the wedding list and discovered that G. Sobieski of Gollister, California was invited. Same name and address as one of the sending addresses. Looking at Dave and pointing to the name, I gave him a "what does that mean?" face. He reached out and hugged me tightly. I invited them. I thought he wouldn't come, but I invited them anyway. I knew he was still in therapy, and I knew Ricky was still studying. Then he kissed me. Admit it, he's already made up for his actions. Grace was good for him, and he was good for her and Ricky. More than a year later, we received their wedding invitation. Dave has already bought tickets. My sisters and their husbands went too. It was an event for the entire extended family. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.